The detention facility on Kepler 442b hummed with the low vibration of atmosphere processors. Zarathek clicked her mandibles in satisfaction as she observed the newest addition to their collection of prisoners. The human soldier sat motionless in the center of the containment cell, his hands bound behind his back with quantum restraints that could hold a charging Vraxian beast. Staff Sergeant Marcus Chun had been captured 3 rotations ago during the failed human assault on the mining colony. Unlike the other species they had encountered in this sector, humans were surprisingly fragile. No natural armor plating, no venomous glands, no enhanced strength from heavy gravity worlds. Yet somehow, these soft creatures had managed to push the hegemony forces back across 17 star systems before finally suffering their first major defeat. Zarathek was a junior interrogator, barely past her molting ceremony, but she had been assigned to break this particular prisoner. Her superiors believed that studying human psychology would give them insights into their military tactics. The Veltar had conquered 43 species across the galaxy, each following predictable patterns once their leadership was eliminated or their homeworlds threatened. Humans, however, seemed to operate under different principles entirely. She activated the cell's communication array and leaned forward, her 4 eyes focusing on the still figure. "Human," she began, her translator rendering her clicking speech into the crude sounds of their language. "You have been designated as Subject Designation 77 Alpha. Your cooperation in our research will determine the comfort level of your remaining existence." Marcus slowly raised his head. His face bore the marks of the battle that had led to his capture, a healing cut across his left cheek, bruising around his right eye that had faded to yellow and green. But his eyes were clear and alert. They studied her with an intensity that made her carapace prickle uncomfortably. "Research," he said, his voice hoarse but steady. "That what you're calling torture these days?" Zarathek chittered, which her species used to express amusement. "Your pain responses are of minimal interest to us, human. We seek to understand how your kind thinks, how you make decisions, how you organize your military structures despite your obvious physical limitations. And you think I'm going to help with that? You will provide the information we require, either through cooperation or through the systematic application of pressure to your psychological weak points." She consulted the data pad floating beside her. "We have already analyzed the communications traffic from your failed assault. Your commander, Colonel Sarah Mitchell, transmitted several personal messages to you during the battle. References to someone named Emma. Your offspring, perhaps." Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but Zarathek's enhanced vision caught the micro-expression. "Excellent. A pressure point already identified. Your species demonstrates an unusual emotional attachment to your genetic offspring," she continued. "Most civilized races understand that young are replaceable. The survival of the individual adult, with their accumulated knowledge and experience, takes priority over immature beings who have contributed nothing to society. You don't have kids, do you?" Marcus asked quietly. The question caught her off guard. In Veltar society, reproduction was a biological function managed by the breeding castes. Warriors and intellectuals like herself were sterilized after their second molting to prevent the distraction of parental instincts from interfering with their duties. "The irrelevant biological urges of reproduction do not cloud our judgment," she replied. "Unlike your species, which allows emotional attachments to compromise tactical decision-making." Marcus leaned back against the wall of his cell. "You really don't get it, do you? Explain. You think caring about my daughter makes me weak. Makes us weak." He met her gaze directly. "But that's exactly what makes us strong." Zarathek's mandibles clicked in confusion. "Emotional attachment is a tactical vulnerability. Your enemies can exploit it. We are exploiting it now." "Are you?" Marcus asked. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you captured 1 soldier out of a force of 12,000. And the only reason you got me is because I stayed behind to cover the evacuation of wounded civilians from the mining platform. A tactically unsound decision that led to your capture." "Maybe, but those civilians made it to the transport ships. 47 people, including 8 children, are alive because I made that choice." His voice carried no boastfulness, just simple fact. "That's not weakness. That's why we fight." Zarathek studied her prisoner more carefully. Standard interrogation protocols suggested that emotional manipulation should have begun breaking down his resistance by now. Instead, he seemed more composed than when she had started. "Your sentiment is irrelevant to military outcomes," she said, though with less certainty than before. "Dead heroes accomplish nothing. Dead heroes inspire living ones," Marcus replied. "Every human who hears about this battle, about the evacuation, about the cost we pay to save those civilians, they'll fight a little harder, care a little more, push a little further. Emotional thinking. It leads to tactical errors. Does it?" Marcus shifted position, the restraints allowing him limited movement. "Tell me something. How long has the hegemony been trying to break through human space?" 18 standard cycles, she answered automatically, then realized she might have revealed strategic information. 18 years, Marcus mused. "And in that time you've conquered, what, 43 other species? That's about 2.5 species per year on average. But us? 18 years, and you've taken 17 systems. Less than 1 per year. And we just handed you your first real victory." Zarathek's secondary arms twitched, a nervous gesture she tried to suppress. The human's mathematics were uncomfortably accurate. "Your resistance has been more stubborn than anticipated," she admitted. "But resistance always crumbles eventually." "Not human resistance," Marcus said with quiet conviction. "Because we're not just fighting for territory or resources or abstract political concepts. We're fighting for Emma, for all the Emmas, for the right of parents to watch their children grow up free. Primitive pack bonding instincts. Call it whatever you want." Marcus's eyes never left hers. "But that little girl is going to grow up knowing that her father didn't abandon his post when things got tough. She'll know that humans don't leave their people behind. And someday, when she's old enough, she might join the fight herself. Not because she has to, but because she chooses to." Zarathek ended the session abruptly, her confidence shaken in ways she didn't fully understand. As she walked through the corridors of the detention facility toward the officers' quarters, she tried to analyze what had gone wrong. The human should have begun breaking down under psychological pressure. Instead, he had somehow turned the interrogation around. She would need to consult with her superiors. Perhaps a different approach was required. But as she settled into her rest cycle, one thought kept intruding on her attempts to clear her mind: the absolute certainty in the human's voice when he spoke about his offspring. It was unlike anything she had encountered in her studies of other species. For the first time since beginning her career as an interrogator, Zarathek wondered if there were some things that could not be broken. Commander Vexhai clicked his approval as he reviewed Zarathek's initial report. The young interrogator had made excellent progress in mapping the human's psychological profile, even if her conclusions seemed somewhat confused. He had decided to observe the next session personally to provide guidance. The detention facility's observation deck offered a perfect view of Cell Block 7 through one-way quantum barriers. Vexhai settled his bulk into the reinforced chair and activated the audio feeds as Zarathek entered the human cell for the second interrogation session. Marcus looked up as she approached, his posture alert despite having been denied sleep for the past rotation. Vexhai noted with professional interest that the human showed remarkable resilience to basic deprivation tactics. "Subject 77 Alpha," Zarathek began, consulting her datapad. "Today we will explore your species' command structure. Specifically, your apparent willingness to sacrifice strategic advantages for the sake of individual lives." "You mean caring about people?" Marcus asked. "During the mining platform assault, your forces had a 73% probability of success if they had maintained their attack formation. Instead, your commander diverted significant resources to evacuate non-combatants. This reduced success probability to 31%. Explain this tactical decision." Marcus was quiet for a moment, as if gathering his thoughts. "Have you ever seen a human child laugh?" The question clearly caught Zarathek off guard. "The vocal expressions of your offspring are irrelevant to military analysis." "Are they?" Marcus shifted forward slightly. "Because I think that's where you're getting everything wrong. You see our care for civilians, for our families, as a weakness to exploit. But you don't understand what it actually means. Enlighten me. When Emma laughs, my daughter, it's not just sound. It's pure joy. Hope. It's everything we're fighting to protect. And when every soldier in our unit knows they're fighting for that laugh, for thousands of laughs like it, we become something more than just warriors following orders. Vexai leaned forward, intrigued despite himself. The human's voice carried an intensity that seemed to affect even Zarathek's usually composed demeanor. You become inefficient, she countered. Emotionally compromised. We become unstoppable, Marcus replied simply. Because a soldier fighting for a paycheck will retreat when the odds get bad. A soldier fighting for his species' territory will surrender when defeat seems inevitable. But a soldier fighting for his daughter's right to exist? That soldier finds reserves of strength and courage that training alone can never provide. Zarathek's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. Emotional motivation is unpredictable. It leads to tactical errors. Sometimes, Marcus admitted, but it also leads to miracles. At the Battle of Kepler, 438C, Captain Rodriguez held a defensive position for 6 hours against overwhelming odds. Tactical doctrine said he should have withdrawn after 20 minutes. But his son was on one of the evacuation transports, and he knew every minute he held that line gave the boy a better chance of escaping. And he died for his sentiment. Yes, but the transport made it to safety. Rodriguez's sacrifice bought time for 300 civilians to escape, including 47 children. And when word of his stand reached the rest of the fleet, they fought with such determination that they turned what should have been a retreat into a counterattack that retook the entire system. Vexai found himself accessing military records on his personal device, cross-referencing the human's claims. The Battle of Kepler, 438C, had indeed resulted in an unexpected hegemony defeat despite overwhelming tactical advantages. You anthropomorphize military effectiveness, Zarathek said, but her voice lacked its earlier confidence. Maybe, or maybe we understand something about warfare that your species has forgotten. Marcus met her gaze steadily. Every human soldier knows that someone specific is counting on them to come home. Emma draws pictures of our house and colors them with bright flowers because she believes I'll be there to see them. My wife, Sarah, reads her bedtime stories and tells her that Daddy is fighting to keep the monsters away. Primitive mythology to comfort offspring. Is it? Marcus asked. Because the monsters in those stories are real now. They're creatures that see children as replaceable biological units, that consider love a tactical weakness, that measure the worth of a life by its immediate utility to the state. Vexai felt an uncomfortable stirring in his chest cavity. The human's words carried implications that reached beyond military analysis. And every human parent who tells that story to their child, Marcus continued, creates a new guardian. Someone who will stand against the monsters, no matter the cost, because they understand that some things are worth more than tactical efficiency or strategic advantage. Your emotional attachments make you predictable, Zarathek insisted. But she was consulting her data pad more frequently, as if seeking reassurance in its technical readouts. Do they? Then why has it taken your hegemony 18 years to make this much progress into our space? Why do your tactical computers keep generating probability models that turn out to be wrong when they encounter human forces? Zarathek's secondary arms twitched visibly. Vexai had seen enough. He activated his communication link and summoned her from the cell. In a corridor outside, she approached with obvious relief at escaping the interrogation chamber. Commander, the subject is proving more psychologically resilient than anticipated. I recommend enhanced pressure techniques. No, Vexai said quietly. Continue with verbal interrogation only. Sir, your report mentioned that the human spoke of his offspring with unusual conviction. I want you to explore that attachment further. Understand its full implications for their military psychology. Zarathek's head tilted in confusion. I don't understand the strategic value of that approach, Commander. Vexai looked through the one-way barrier at the human soldier, who sat in apparent meditation despite his circumstances. Neither do I, he admitted. But something the prisoner said has disturbed my tactical assessments. Continue the interrogation, but focus on understanding rather than breaking. I need to comprehend how their emotional responses translate to battlefield effectiveness. As Zarathek acknowledged her orders and returned to the cell, Vexai remained in the observation deck. He had spent 40 cycles studying human military patterns, and the more he learned, the less predictable they became. Standard hegemony doctrine assumed that all species would prioritize survival and efficiency above abstract concepts. Humans seem to operate under entirely different principles. For the first time in his military career, Vexhai began to wonder if the hegemony's understanding of warfare itself might be fundamentally flawed. The thought was deeply troubling, but the evidence was becoming harder to ignore. In the cell below, Marcus had begun talking again, his voice carrying that same quiet conviction that seemed to reach beyond the walls of the detention facility and touch something the Veltar had forgotten they possessed. High Admiral Kethazar received the report from Commander Vexhai with growing concern. 3 weeks of interrogation had produced volumes of data about human psychology, but none of it followed conventional patterns. The prisoner had not broken. More troubling, the interrogation team seemed to be questioning their own methodologies. She decided to take personal control of the situation. The detention facility's primary interrogation chamber had been configured for this special session. Kethazar stood nearly 3 meters tall, her ceremonial combat armor gleaming with honors earned across dozens of conquered worlds. Her presence alone had been known to break the will of enemy commanders. Marcus was brought in under heavy guard, his quantum restraints now supplemented with neural suppressors that prevented any possibility of escape. Yet as he was secured to the examination table, his eyes showed no fear, only watchful alertness. "I am High Admiral Kethazar of the Hegemony Conquest Fleet," she announced, her voice carrying the authority of absolute power. "Your interrogators have been inadequate. Today we will discuss the true cost of your species' emotional weaknesses." "Admiral," Marcus acknowledged respectfully. Kethazar activated a holographic display that filled the chamber with 3-dimensional star maps. Red markers indicated hegemony-controlled systems, while blue showed the remaining human territories. "Observe the strategic situation," she commanded. 17 of your systems have fallen to our forces. Your industrial capacity has been reduced by 68%. Your fleet's strength has declined to 31% of pre-war levels. Yet your species continues to resist when logic dictates surrender. Marcus studied the display with professional interest. "Those are impressive gains for your forces. They're inevitable conquests. Your resistance only prolongs suffering for your civilian populations." "Maybe, but you're still talking about conquests instead of accomplished facts. 18 years to take 17 systems from what you consider an emotionally compromised species. How long did it take you to conquer the Vraxians?" Kethazar's mandibles clicked involuntarily. The Vraxian campaign had lasted only 14 months. "The Vraxians were a warrior culture," she said. "They fought with honor, but accepted defeat when their leadership was eliminated. Your species fights without coherent strategy, sacrificing military assets for meaningless gestures. Like evacuating civilians?" "Precisely. Non-combatants contribute nothing to military effectiveness. Resources expended on their protection weaken your overall position." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his eyes still focused on the star map. "Admiral, can I ask you something?" "Speak. Do you have a family?" The question struck Kethazar as completely irrelevant. "I'm the genetic product of optimal breeding selection. My progenitors were chosen for intelligence and tactical acumen. Such biological connections are irrelevant to military command." "So you've never experienced love?" "Love is a chemical reaction that interferes with rational decision-making." "Is it?" Marcus shifted slightly on the examination table. "Because I think you're making a fundamental error in your strategic calculations." "Explain." "You see our love for our families as a weakness because it makes us do things that don't make tactical sense. But you're measuring with the wrong metrics. You think military effectiveness comes from perfect coordination and logical decision-making." Kethazar's 4 eyes focused intently on the prisoner. "It does. Then, why are we still here?" The simple question hung in the air between them. Kethazar found herself accessing tactical databases, reviewing battle reports, searching for an answer that increasingly seemed to elude standard analysis. "Your resistance has been more persistent than predicted," she admitted. "It's more than persistence," Marcus said. "When our forces know they're protecting their homes, their families, their children's futures, they don't fight like soldiers following orders. They fight like parents protecting their young. And there's no force in the universe more dangerous than that. Emotional extremism leads to tactical irrationality." "Does it?" Or does it lead to the kind of desperate innovation that your tactical computers can't predict? Marcus met her gaze directly. At the Battle of Ross 154, Lieutenant Shun, no relation, was supposed to retreat when his position became untenable. Standard doctrine, logical decision. But his daughter had sent him a drawing of a rainbow the day before, with a note saying she was proud of him. Kethazar found herself accessing the battle records despite her intention to focus solely on the interrogation. Chen held that position for 3 additional hours. Marcus continued. Long enough for reinforcements to arrive. But it wasn't military discipline that kept him there. It was the knowledge that his little girl believed her father was a hero. And you know what? In that moment, he was. Because heroes don't retreat when other heroes are counting on them. One aberrant individual case proves nothing. Then, explain the overall pattern. Explain why every time your forces achieve tactical superiority, human units find ways to turn defeats into stalemates and stalemates into victories. Explain why our recruitment rates increase after every battle, even the ones we lose. Kethazar's secondary arms twitched as she processed the implications. The human was correct about recruitment patterns. Hegemony intelligence had documented the phenomenon, but classified it as an anomaly. Your species' breeding instincts create irrational protective behaviors, she said, but the words felt less certain than they had moments before. Our love creates unbreakable bonds, Marcus replied. When a human soldier knows that his sacrifice might save his family or someone else's family, he doesn't calculate odds. He doesn't weigh cost-benefit ratios. He simply acts with everything he has because some things are worth more than survival. A flawed philosophical position. Is it? Because from my perspective, a species that doesn't understand love, that doesn't fight for anything beyond conquest and efficiency, is the one that's fundamentally flawed. Marcus's voice carried no hostility, only sadness. You've conquered 43 species, Admiral. But what have you actually won? What do your people have that's worth fighting for? The question struck Kethazar with unexpected force. The hegemony fought for expansion, for resources, for the logical goal of galactic dominance. These were rational objectives that served the species' long-term survival and prosperity. Yet as she looked at this captured human, bound and helpless but somehow undefeated, she found herself questioning whether survival and prosperity were sufficient justifications for existence. Power is its own justification, she said finally. Power over what? For what purpose? Marcus asked. If you succeed in conquering all of human space, what then? You'll have eliminated one of the few species that might have taught you something about the difference between existing and truly living. Kethazar ended the session abruptly, her confidence shaken by concepts she had no framework to process. As she left the detention facility, she carried with her the uncomfortable realization that her understanding of human resistance might be fundamentally incomplete. For a species that prided itself on logical analysis, the Veltar suddenly seemed to be missing crucial variables in their strategic calculations. Variables that had names and faces and small hands that drew pictures of rainbows for their fathers. Empress Velandra received the disturbing reports from her military commanders with the cold calculation that had made her species the dominant force in 17 galactic sectors. Yet the pattern emerging from the human interrogation suggested variables her analyst had failed to account for. She descended personally to the detention facility, an honor no previous prisoner had received. Her arrival sent ripples of nervous energy through the staff. The Empress rarely left the capital ships unless a situation demanded her direct intervention. Marcus was brought to the facility's primary interrogation chamber, now reconfigured with full ceremonial protocols. The prisoner had lost weight during his captivity, but maintained the alert bearing that had frustrated all previous interrogation attempts. I am Empress Velandra, Supreme Commander of the Hegemony Forces, she announced, her voice carrying the authority of absolute power over billions of beings. Your species' resistance has required my personal attention. Your Majesty, Marcus responded with a slight nod of acknowledgement. The Empress studied her prisoner carefully. Unlike the fear or defiance she typically encountered, the human displayed something closer to respectful curiosity. His psychological profile indicated extreme resilience, but the source of that resilience remained unclear. My interrogators have provided extensive documentation of your species' emotional attachments, she began. You claim these attachments provide military advantages that our strategic models fail to predict. They do. Demonstrate. Marcus was quiet for a moment, as if considering how to explain something fundamental to an audience that lacked the basic framework to understand it. Your Majesty, may I ask you something? The request surprised her. Previous prisoners had begged, threatened, or attempted negotiation. None had simply asked permission to pose questions. Speak. What is the purpose of the hegemony? Galactic dominance. The optimal allocation of resources across star systems. The elimination of inefficient governmental structures. And after you achieve that dominance, what then? The question seemed almost nonsensical. Maintenance of optimal resource allocation. Continued expansion into neighboring galactic sectors. Forever, until all available resources are under rational management. Marcus nodded slowly. A perfectly logical goal for a rational species. But it's also completely hollow. Empress Valandra's 4 eyes focused intently on the prisoner. Explain. You're building an empire for the sake of having an empire. Expanding for the sake of expansion. But there's no heart to it, no soul. No reason beyond mere existence. Marcus met her gaze steadily. We fight for something different. Emotional sentiment. Hope. Marcus corrected. We fight so that children like my daughter can grow up in a universe where they're free to make their own choices. Where they can love who they want to love, create what they want to create, dream dreams that go beyond mere efficiency. Dreams are neural static, inefficient processing of experiential data. Dreams are possibilities, Marcus replied. When Emma draws her pictures of our house with flowers, she's not just making random marks on paper. She's imagining a future where beauty exists for its own sake, where someone can spend time creating something just because it makes them happy. Empress Valandra accessed her memory banks for references to beauty and happiness. Both concepts appeared in her databases as psychological phenomena observed in conquered species, but their strategic relevance had always been classified as negligible. Such activities contribute nothing to survival or advancement. They contribute everything, Marcus said quietly, because they give survival meaning. Your species might live forever, Empress, but what's the point of eternal existence if there's nothing worth experiencing? Existence is its own justification. Is it? Because from where I sit, it looks like you've created the most sophisticated machinery in the galaxy for converting resources into more machinery. But I don't see any indication that your people are actually happy. The concept of happiness as a strategic objective had never appeared in any hegemony planning document. Valandra found herself accessing psychological profiles of her own species, searching for data that had never seemed relevant before. Happiness is a temporary neurochemical state, she said, though the words felt increasingly hollow. Happiness is the difference between existing and living, Marcus replied. And that's why you'll never truly defeat humanity. Because every human fighting against you isn't just trying to survive. They're trying to preserve the possibility of joy. Your resistance will eventually fail. Mathematics dictates the outcome. Maybe. But even if you destroy every human ship, conquer every human world, you still won't have one. Because the ideas we fight for, the love we feel for our families, the hope we have for our children's futures, those aren't things you can destroy with weapons. Empress Valandra activated a holographic display showing current military dispositions. Your fleet strength continues to decline. Your industrial capacity approaches critical thresholds. Hope does not alter strategic reality, doesn't it? Marcus studied the display with obvious tactical knowledge. Your own reports show the human forces consistently exceed predicted performance parameters. Soldiers who should retreat instead hold their positions. Units that should break instead find ways to adapt and overcome. You call it emotional irrationality, but the results speak for themselves. Statistical anomalies, or evidence that you're measuring the wrong variables. Marcus shifted forward slightly. Your tactical computers calculate expected outcomes based on resources, firepower, and personnel. But they can't quantify what happens when a mother fights to protect her children, or when a father refuses to let his daughter grow up as a slave. The Empress found herself reviewing battle analyses with new attention to previously dismissed factors. Pattern recognition algorithms began identifying correlations between human emotional indicators and battlefield performance that she had never considered strategically relevant. You suggest that emotional states translate to measurable military advantages. I'm saying that love makes us stronger than the sum of our parts. When our people fight, they're not just following orders or pursuing objectives. They're protecting everything they care about. And that transforms ordinary soldiers into something extraordinary. Temporary enhancement through biochemical stress responses. Permanent enhancement through understanding what's worth fighting for. Marcus's voice carried absolute conviction. Your species has forgotten that survival without purpose is just a longer path to meaninglessness. Our purpose gives us power your tactical computers can't measure. Empress Valandra terminated the session, but the human's words continued to resonate through her consciousness as she returned to her command ship. For the first time in her reign, she found herself questioning not just tactical decisions, but the fundamental assumptions underlying hegemony civilization. The possibility that her species had optimized for efficiency at the cost of something more valuable was a disturbing concept that threatened to undermine everything she had believed about the natural order of the universe. Yet the evidence was becoming increasingly difficult to dismiss. Human resistance continued to exceed all predictions, and the source of that resistance might be something her species had eliminated from their own psychological makeup millennia ago. The war was no longer just about territorial conquest. It had become a contest between two fundamentally different approaches to existence itself. The rescue came at dawn on Kepler, 442b, 3 months after Marcus's capture. Human special forces had spent weeks infiltrating the heavily fortified system, guided by intelligence gathered through means the hegemony had never anticipated. Zarathek was in her quarters when the alarms began wailing. Emergency lights bathed the detention facility in pulsing red as automated defense systems activated. She rushed to the monitoring station, expecting to see orbital bombardment or a massive fleet engagement. Instead, her screens showed something impossible. A single human transport had somehow penetrated the system's defenses and was descending toward the facility. No ship that small should have been able to reach the planet's surface undetected. The truth became clear when the transport's cargo bay opened. The rescue team consisted entirely of humans who had been declared dead in previous engagements. Soldiers who had supposedly died covering evacuations, protecting civilian transports, or holding impossible defensive positions. Each one bearing scars that told stories of sacrifice and survival. Marcus was in his cell when the facility's security barriers failed. Human soldiers moved through the corridors with precision that spoke of detailed intelligence and careful planning. But their faces showed something beyond professional competence. They carried themselves like people who had come home. Staff Sergeant Chun? The voice belonged to Captain Rodriguez, a man Marcus had written a condolence letter for 6 months earlier. Rodriguez? But you were... Marcus stared in disbelief as the quantum restraints dissolved under the application of human countermeasures. Dead? Yeah. Well, reports of my demise were greatly exaggerated. Rodriguez helped Marcus to his feet with obvious relief. Turns out being willing to die for something doesn't always mean you actually have to. As they moved through the facility toward the extraction point, Marcus saw other members of the rescue team. Lieutenant Chun, supposedly killed defending a civilian convoy. Sergeant Williams, listed as Kia during a boarding action against a hegemony cruiser. Corporal Santos, who had vanished during a reconnaissance mission behind enemy lines. How is this possible? Marcus asked as they reached the transport. Turns out that when you fight for something bigger than yourself, the universe has a way of providing second chances, Rodriguez replied. We've been building a network, staying behind enemy lines, gathering intelligence. Every dead human soldier who survived has been working toward this moment. The transport lifted off as hegemony reinforcements arrived, but the human ship's modifications allowed it to evade pursuit with ease. As Kepler, 442b fell away below them, Marcus finally understood the full scope of what he was seeing. This wasn't a rescue mission, he said quietly. This was a demonstration. Rodriguez nodded grimly. The Empress needed to understand something. Every time they think they've killed a human soldier fighting for family, for freedom, for hope, sometimes they're wrong. And those soldiers remember why they fight. In her command center, Empress Velandra watched the impossible rescue with growing comprehension. Her interrogation of the human prisoner had revealed strategic variables her species had never considered. Now, she was witnessing the practical application of those variables. The humans weren't just fighting a military campaign. They had created a resistance network based entirely on emotional connections that her intelligence services couldn't detect or predict. Soldiers thought dead continued fighting not because of orders, but because they chose to, because they understood that some causes transcended individual survival. Empress, Commander Vexhai reported, his voice carrying unprecedented uncertainty. The prisoner rescue was conducted by personnel we had confirmed as casualties. Our casualty assessment protocols may be fundamentally flawed. Explain. Human soldiers demonstrate survival rates that exceed biological possibility when defending emotional objectives. They appear capable of continuing operations even after sustaining injuries that should be fatal. The psychological factors the prisoner discussed may have measurable physiological effects. Empress Velandra accessed the complete interrogation records, reviewing every conversation with new understanding. The human had not been providing intelligence about his species' weaknesses. He had been educating her about their strengths. Summon the high command, she ordered. Full strategic review. The emergency session convened within hours, bringing together the hegemony's most experienced military commanders. Empress Velandra presented the accumulated evidence of human resistance patterns, correlation analyses between emotional factors and battlefield performance, and the implications of the prisoner rescue. Our tactical models assume that all species prioritize survival above abstract objectives, she explained to the assembled officers. Humans appear to operate under different priorities entirely. High Admiral Kethazar reviewed the data with growing unease. You suggest that their emotional attachments provide actual military advantages? I suggest that we have been fighting the wrong war, the Empress replied. We assumed that conquering their territories would break their resistance. Instead, every system we take strengthens their resolve by giving them more to fight for. Commander Vexhai activated tactical projections showing the 18-year campaign from a new perspective. If we accept that human emotional states correlate with enhanced performance, the pattern becomes clear. They're not losing systems. They're choosing which battles to fight while building something we can't see or measure. A resistance network based on personal connections rather than command structures, Admiral Kethazar realized. Immune to leadership decapitation because every individual soldier has personal reasons to continue fighting. Empress Velandra studied the star maps with new eyes. Red markers indicated hegemony control, but the blue zones representing human space now seemed less like territory to be conquered and more like a puzzle she had been solving incorrectly. Strategic recommendation, she asked her commanders. The silence stretched for long moments before High Admiral Kethazar spoke. Negotiation. Explain. We cannot defeat an enemy that becomes stronger through loss, that converts tragedy into motivation, that treats individual sacrifice as strategic victory. The humans are fighting for concepts that make them functionally invincible as long as those concepts survive. Empress Velandra contemplated the unprecedented recommendation. In 43 previous conquests, negotiation had never been necessary. But none of those species had demonstrated the capacity to transform love into a weapon of war. Months later, the first formal peace talks began in neutral space. Marcus Chun, promoted to colonel after his rescue, served as part of the human delegation. Across the negotiation table sat Empress Velandra, flanked by the same commanders who had once sought to break his will. Colonel Chun, the Empress acknowledged as the session opened. Our conversations have led to significant reevaluation of hegemony strategic objectives. Your Majesty, Marcus replied respectfully. I hope they've been educational. Indeed, we have concluded that conquest of human space would require resources disproportionate to potential benefits. Your species' resistance model appears to be sustainable indefinitely. The negotiations proceeded over weeks, establishing boundaries and trade agreements that acknowledge humanity's right to exist according to their own values. But The real victory had been won in a detention cell, through conversations that revealed the power of fighting for something beyond mere survival. As the treaty was signed, Marcus thought of Emma, now several months older and still drawing pictures of houses with bright flowers. The universe she would inherit would be one where love had proven stronger than logic, where hope had prevailed over efficiency, and where the bonds between people had become humanity's greatest weapon. The hegemony would continue to expand in other directions, but they would do so with new understanding of the variables that truly determined victory. Some things, they had learned, were simply too powerful to conquer. And in detention facilities across hegemony space, other species prisoners began to receive different treatment as interrogators struggled to apply lessons learned from a human soldier who had never broken because he had something worth staying whole for.